Good morning, YouTube. My name is Alex. Welcome back to the Lifting Nomad. In today's video, we're going to talk about the three main types of accommodations that you can stay in during your remote working, digital nomad, travel lifestyle. What sort of the pros and cons of each, the costs, all of that, barrier to entry, everything that really you could think about for when you're picking your destination, how you want to live, where you want to stay. So without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, awesome. So we're back in the kitchen where we typically eat some food. And on that note, that's kind of going to be a nice segue. Doesn't really make sense, but into the three main choices for choosing your accommodation for your remote work lifestyle. Now, these all have their different pros and cons. Some people like the different ones. Really depends on your style. So we're going to go through kind of what I think is the pros and cons of each, the risks, what you should choose, and you can kind of make your decision based off of that. My recommendation, as always, is to do your research, understand what's going to be important to you, location, quality of life, access to amenities like gyms and transportation and airport closeness. If you're traveling solo, let's say you're a woman and you're traveling solo and you care about safety, that's obviously something you're going to want to look up. So my advice is always to correlate multiple sources of information. Don't just go with one person, because that person could be an idiot. I could be an idiot, who knows? And if you have like a consistency across that, likely going to be a good direction for you to choose. So the three, I think, most popular options, and really I can't really see anything else other than maybe like couch surfing or doing like world packers or that kind of thing, where you're doing working on a farm, that kind of thing. Basically, you have three choices, right? So you have your hotel, hostel, or like Airbnb/apartment rental. And these days with Airbnb being so expensive, it tends to not be as big of a gap between the three. It also is going to depend on how much work you're going to be doing. Are you working from home? Are you going to have access to workspace nearby that you can go to and set up and actually be productive? Or are you going to be working from your fucking bedroom most of the time and you need actually like a solid home Wi-Fi connection, not to have roommates bursting in on you all the time? Probably can't do that if you're in like a bunk style hostel. So let's talk about the first one, and that is staying in hotels. Now, historically, hotels were the most expensive, right? And the reason being, you're typically paying for cleaning services. So once a day or once every couple of days, you have someone coming in, cleaning your room, changing your sheets, all that. That costs money. So it tends to be more expensive for a hotel. On average, hotels usually have more like English speaking as well. Really, wherever you are, if it's a nicer hotel, they tend to speak more English. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And hotels are great for individuals who, first of all, if you're worried about safety at all, having a good home base with a hotel is going to be great. There's going to be lobby security. You're not typically going to be able to get up to the rooms. People are tending to be, I guess, sketchy in hotels as well. Like places like Colombia, for instance, let's say when I was staying in Medellin, the really nice hotels, you can stay there, but not saying I partake in this, but we did go to one of the rooftops, and there's a lot of hookers in Colombia, or prostitutes, and it's legal there. So the hotels have a lot of prostitution in them. And one of the things they do is they actually make you ID, make the girls, or I guess guys, show ID in order to get into the building, because they're keeping a track record of who's coming in and out, making sure you're not getting murdered and robbed, that kind of thing. So it's something to consider if that's one of the reasons you're going to be traveling. Obviously, safety. Hotel is going to be likely the safest option of any of them. It's going to also have a lot of English, but it's also going to be most expensive. Now, that's some of the pros. Some of the other pros, typically good internet is going to be consistent in hotels. You're going to have access to a TV in most rooms. The bathrooms are going to be tending to be pretty clean if you're at like a 3 or 4 star hotel. And they also tend to have good infrastructure for like cabs and Uber pickup and that kind of thing, because they're used to a lot of transient guests, right? Those are the pros. And obviously I do want to talk about the cons as well. I think one of the biggest cons with staying in a hotel is, first of all, you're going to have to likely eat out most of the time. Most hotel rooms, sometimes you get like a kitchenette, or a small piece of the room will have a kitchen. But other than that, you're going to be eating out most of the time, or delivery, because you don't have a kitchen. So of course you can do stuff that doesn't require much cooking, or you could buy like a hot plate, I guess, to do in your room if you wanted to, but it's really gonna be a pain in the ass. So cooking at home, if that's important to you, me, for instance, I'm more of a fitness focused traveler. So when I travel, I need to stay somewhat on a meal plan. So I need to have a kitchen in most of the places where I stay. So having a hotel room where, A, I'm a clean person to begin with, so it's not that big of a deal for me to clean up after myself. And then B, I need a kitchen in order to cook and make my own meals. Hotels for me really aren't the best fit. And then building off of that, the social aspect of hotels tends to not really be there, because most of the time if you're staying in a hotel, people are there for a couple days up to a week. So if you're doing like a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month stay, you're gonna just have a cycle of people coming in and out, and you're not really gonna be able to make friends with anyone. Maybe like the hotel bar or something like that, but there really isn't like an aggregate space to meet one another. There, on that note, there are more and more hotel style co-working situations or co-living situations becoming more and more popular, where they have, a co-working space, like a pool and a bar and everything that's more long-term guests, but then that's kind of coming more like a hostel. So that's what I think about hotels. From there, let's go over to hostels. Now, hostels basically have two different styles, right? You can do like a bunk bed dorm setup where they're really cheap on average, and you're not gonna have much privacy, or you can do like a private, which is basically a hotel room in a hostel. For me, this is probably the best option, I think, if I'm traveling by myself, to do a private room in a hostel for a few reasons. Obviously, the pros tends to be a little bit cheaper staying in a hostel than a hotel. Not all the time, obviously, but that's most of the time. And the other thing is you get the privacy. I'm in sales, so I have to do sales calls. So I need the privacy of my own room in order to not get interrupted, not have people fucking walking around in the background, that kind of thing, the noise. Like, it's just my room. I can work in there and that's fine. So hostel privates work great for me. There's also just a higher level of security and safety if you're in a private. You tend to get your own like safe and key code in the room, so you can put your valuables in there when you're not there. And it just feels a little bit more safe overall for that kind of thing. I also really like having hostels in a private because of the social and just sort of comfort of being around people. Like hotels, even though most of the rooms are full, let's say, you tend to be pretty isolated. But the thing about a hostel environment is people tend to just sleep in their rooms and then they go out to like the bar or the patio or the communal space and hang out. So you kind of like, if you're ever getting lonely, which will happen if you're traveling alone and being a digital nomad, you can just go out and get a coffee and sit around people. And even if you don't talk to them, I tend to just feel a little bit warmer. It's kind of like getting like a light hug. If you're in a coffee shop with people around you talking and working, you just kind of feel like, okay, maybe I'm not in this alone. And some of that worry goes away a little bit. And then obviously the social aspect for me is really, really important. One of the biggest reasons I travel is to meet people and learn new things. So when I'm in a hostel, it's really easy for me to just chat someone up at the bar, go on a pub crawl, get into some bad, bad situations maybe, and just have some fun to not just work and sleep and eat. Building off of that from the eating is most hostels are gonna have a kitchen space as well. Now, notoriously, they're pretty overcrowded and not the cleanest, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to cook. But you can do things like oats and protein and just like, that kind of quick meals, maybe like some sandwiches with some bread and some lunch meats. Do things like breakfast and lunch in the hostel. And then I've even stayed in some Salinas where you have a mini fridge in your room that lets you keep like the sandwiches stuff in your room. So that way you can just have that prepped. You don't have to deal with the kitchen so much. And then for like dinner, you can do, order out or go do takeout. Because part of the reason I travel as well is to eat new food. So if you're staying in a somewhat lower cost of living country, you can go eat dinner pretty cheaply. Now, obviously some of the cons to hostel living is it can be tough to work sometimes, as there's a lot of temptation to get into trouble, whether that's drinking, partying, meeting new people, going out, that kind of thing. It can just get you into some sticky situations, metaphorically and literally. And the second thing with that many people is it can be distracting, not just the temptation, but if there's noise in the background or just people always around, it can get a little frustrating to deal with when you don't have like your own private space. That's why, again, I really like having a private in a hostel. Again, the con with the kitchen, really a pain if you're looking to cook all your meals. It can be pretty difficult for that. And then the kind of the safety piece, like because you're not in your own hotel room, sometimes in hostels, there's like, people can come in there if they're not staying there, and there's like sometimes been theft in hostels, that kind of thing. So you do need to be a little more cognizant of where you're staying in order for that to be, if that's a priority for you. So that's hostels. Personally, my choice number one, private in a hostel. I like the Salinas, they're expensive, but I have the ability to do it, and they actually do like pretty good monthly rates if you do their co-living program. So there are some options there for you. They have them all over South America, expanding more into Europe. So something to check out. Salina Hostels, shameless plug. Now, the third option is an apartment rental or Airbnb. And I'm also gonna add in a second or third option to this as well that I'll talk about at the end. So first one is a long-term apartment rental, Airbnb, booking.com, that kind of thing, VRBO, that sort of. So obviously the biggest con to this is you can have a lot more flexibility in what you're choosing. There's just thousands and millions of options of Airbnbs, right? Like if let's say you want to do Airbnb, obviously it's expensive and there's a lot of people who will say it's destructive to the local economy, which it absolutely is. But the reality is, like it or not, people are going to book Airbnbs. So just ignoring it and pretending it's not an option, it doesn't really make logical sense. I've had amazing experiences with Airbnbs that weren't that expensive in amazing neighborhoods that fulfilled all my needs. So, don't just knock it out because of what other people are saying. Airbnb or booking.com or apartment rentals, you can choose whatever you want. You can choose the neighborhood you want, the size, the style. So if you're traveling with friends, you can get a 2, 3, 4 bedroom place. Get your own kitchen, you can cook your own meals. You can be a lot more logical with how you're buying groceries and cost conscious, that sort of thing. So definitely some options for Airbnb or booking.com or apartment rentals that aren't normally there. The cons, like I talked about there, sometimes can be destructive to the local economy. There's a lot of issues with like Lisbon, Portugal, with this being an issue where the locals actually can't afford to live there because of how many people are doing Airbnbs, and then expats and digital nomads and foreigners are coming there and booking these Airbnbs, the prices the locals out. It's a pretty bad tragedy. But like I said, someone's gonna rent it. If it's not you, someone else will. So, it's really, in my eyes, it's a difficult problem and not an easy fix to have. And then one of the other cons, I think, is, again, a little bit of social isolation. So if you're going there to meet people and explore new places, it can be tough to make friends. I'm personally trying, one of the first times doing an Airbnb by myself in January in Argentina. And I want to see if I can kind of get out of my comfort zone of just being on my own and still being able to meet people. Like I've traveled lots by myself, but this will be one of the first times I'm not in a hostel. I'm just doing my own thing. And that's on purpose. I want to see how well I can fare, what I will learn about myself, spending that much time alone, and if I can still make friends doing it. So exciting, but also not the best. Now, the third piece to apartment rentals is actually I want to talk about kind of some of these remote working trips that are becoming more and more common. Probably the most common is Remote Year or Wi-Fi Tribe. I personally did Remote Year in Lisbon and I had a fucking blast. So long story short, they basically pair you up kind of like Kentucky or G Adventures, one of those booking trips where you just sign up and then they do the rest for you. They basically do that before a month trip in one city you choose. So for instance, I did Lisbon, Portugal, I booked for it, and it was about the same price as like an Airbnb would have been, but they pair you up with, so my group was like 36 other people. Most people are remote workers. We had like a lot of tech, some like technical writers, some students who were doing remote school. We had a couple like professors. So some like really cool people you're gonna meet. Average age, I would say right around 30. I was a little bit younger than most people there, but not by much. So I would say most people were like in their 30s with professional jobs. And it gives you some pretty cool experiences. So we had like a local flat that's not available via Airbnb. Then the other cool part is they sign you up for like local experiences that you wouldn't normally get exposed to. So one of the things we did was like a yacht tour around the Lisbon harbor. We had like wine and music and everyone from the crew was there. So there was like 30 of us. And we also did like a local winery tour just north of Lisbon, kind of close to Sintra. We went out to a vineyard, got the wine tour, got to drink wine, explore it. That was really nice. And we did like a pasta del nata class, which is like these local Portuguese desserts. We went and made them ourselves. So you get kind of like these pretty cool, unique experiences that are just for the Remote Year crew. And then on top of that, you have like a group of like 30, 35 people to do things with throughout the time you're there. So we had like a Slack channel of all 35 of us. Anytime I was like done work early, I could just ping the group like, hey, anyone want to grab a beer, want to grab a bite? And there's usually someone who's always down because of how many people there are. So I would recommend that if safety's a concern, because you're going to be with a group. Like my apartment in Lisbon, there was 7 of us in one apartment. It was a 7-bedroom, 7-bathroom flat. It was huge. So you could do things like that are pretty cool. I recommend Remote Year wholeheartedly. I think it was one of the best experiences of my life. I'm gonna be doing it again in Peru, and I'm really excited to try it again. So that's pretty much the video. Those are my 3 main options. So hopefully that was somewhat useful to hear some positives and minuses, some pros and cons of each one. If you agree with any of it, feel free to comment below. If you don't agree, do you want me to touch grass? Let me know why, what you would suggest in the comment section down below. As always, my name is Alex. Welcome back to the Lifting Nomad. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.